Hello, I'm Geetha Ganapathy-Doré, and I'm happy to be able to present my paper online for the AI Fiction Conference in Paris. India today has made a name for itself in information technology, and the cities of Bangalore and Hyderabad have become household names in many parts of the world. Films that portray India's call center universe, such as Danny Boyle's Slum Dog Millionaire or Atul Agnihotri's Hello, based on Chetan Bhagat's novel One Night at the Call Center, attest the widespread recourse to artificial intelligence in contemporary India. Yash Shankar's 2010 movie Yandiran went a step further and portrayed an android robot falling in love with the girlfriend of his maker. At a conference held on March 11 and 12, 2021, on AI narratives in India, jointly by Ahmedabad University and the Leverhulme Center for the Future of Intelligence, University of Cambridge, researchers have investigated some of the issues I wished to explore when I wrote my proposal for our conference. Listening to the videos, I was able to discover three contemporary writers of AI narratives: S.B. Divya, Samit Basu, and Tanuj Solanki. Another panel dealt with AI stories in Hindi, Bengali, and Malayalam. Fortunately for me, the corpus of works I have taken up for scrutiny, the anticipatory novel of the Tamil writer Sujatha Rangarajan, serialized in the 1980s, and the astrophysicist Jayant V. Narlikar's science fiction in English, The Return of Varman, published in 1989, as well as the techno-artistic memoir Geek Sublime of the writer-cum-programmer Vikram Chandra, and Granthika, the application he designed, have not been discussed at that conference. My paper aims to analyze these works in the Indian literary context and show how the symbolic practice of fiction writing is being transformed in India thanks to unique processing of modernity from tradition under the impulse of the knowledge economy. India's reputation as an information technology giant is traced back to the founding of Infosys Technologies Limited by N.R. Narayanamurthy, together with 7 other software engineers in Bangalore in 1981. Infosys set up its international office in the US in 1987. In the year 1999, the company helped some American firms fix the Y2K bug. The offshoring model became in vogue, and the skills of Indian computer scientists were recognized worldwide. India could finally be rid of the cliched and orientalist images of it and project itself as a modern and technologically savvy nation. However, the impetus for the technologization and computerization of India had come much earlier. In the 1950s, Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru built the temples of learning, which are the IITs. His grandson Rajiv Gandhi, who became India's Prime Minister after the assassination of his mother Indira Gandhi in 1984, was a computer buff, and this object was at the center of his plan to modernize the country. He is hailed as the architect of digital India. He established close ties with Japan. During his regime, technocrats started to hobnob with civil servants in the corridors of power. The Tamil writer Rangarajan, who took the female name Sujatha as pen name, which was actually his wife's name, was an engineer employed in Bharat Electronics Limited, a state-owned enterprise under the Defence Ministry of India. Rangarajan supervised the design and production of the electronic voting machine currently used in India. He started writing science fiction in Tamil to popularize scientific concepts among Tamil-speaking readers. He used loan words and coined new words and thereby enriched the semantics of the Tamil language and increased the knowledge base of speakers of Tamil. Like Orwell's 1984, En Iniya Yandira is a futuristic novel set in 2021. Yandira rhymes with the name of the Prime Minister Indira, but it is not a first name but a generic name applied to any machine. India has by then become a surveillance state. The story revolves around an omniscient and omnipotent, but nevertheless human figure, Jeeva, who is the president of the country. A material utopia has been achieved. The government satisfies all the basic needs of the population, including their sexual urges, but does not allow them freedom to procreate. It tells the couple when they can have a child and of which gender. Games like cricket and hockey have been banned. Only a competition between humans and robots called Jave is allowed. Neela, the computer scientist Sibi's wife, is manipulated by Ravi, who belongs to a revolutionary group which wants to overthrow the dictator Jiva. Neela develops a fondness for his robot dog Zeno, named after the Greek philosopher. Zeno is well versed in many languages and reads Shelley, Nietzsche, Russell, Cuppi, and Hemingway. Ravi tricks Neela into a plot to assassinate Jiva. Zeno, which has by now become an autonomously thinking robot, instead of merely being a pet, thanks to Neela's affection, helps her realize that Jiva was nothing but a holographic illusion. When Neela opens the eyes of the ignorant mass of citizens, she is hoisted into the position of new president by Ravi. When Ravi realizes that Zeno has become more intelligent and is protecting Neela by telling her that he and his friend Mano were the ones pulling strings behind the scenes and that one day she would be their victim, he demands a sacrifice from Neela to test her loyalty by asking her to part with Zeno. Ravi mercilessly dismantles the robot dog and gets its electronic chip burnt. But what Ravi does not know is the fact that he has been outwitted by Zeno, who had thwarted his coup and saved itself. In the sequel published in 1987, Meendum Zeno, the robot helps Neela overthrow Ravi and Manu and restore democracy. Zeno in this novel has been perceived by Tamil readers as the disembodied mind of the scientist author encased in a robot body. The writer, however, had said that he was merely thinking aloud about whether artificial intelligence could govern India better than politicians acting out of self-interest. In My Dear Machine, the reader comes across modern materials, notions, devices, systems, techniques, and methods which were not in common use in India in the 1980s. The main twist in the story, where the revolutionaries are portrayed as the betrayers, while being a close translation of the political reality of India at the time, seems to be a conscious attempt to use the paradox of suspense. The narrative pattern is, however, that of a classical romance. A damsel in distress is saved by a robot which falls for her beauty. The pun on the word Yandira and Indira, as well as the name Jiva, provide some clues to the political dimension of the novel. During the emergency, that is between 1975 and 1977, the then Indian National Congress's president Devkant Parua joined the slogan, India is Indira, Indira is India. Sujata suggests that Yandira might have been better than Indira for India. The figure of Jiva seems to be drawn from Jagjeevan Ram, a minister who had held various portfolios in independent India and supported Indira Gandhi during the emergency, but later returned the West, joined the opposition, and served as deputy prime minister. Conversely, the Sanskrit word Jiva, separated from Atma, or the soul, can connote the disjunction between Zoe and Bios that has occurred due to the widespread use of digital technology in governance. At the social level, the novel stages the rigidity of the patriarchal system which deprives women of agency. Zeno serves as a transitional object in Neela's negotiation with the father-husband-lover triad. Informed readers will discern in Sujata's novel a constellation of characters based on the structure of atoms orbiting in circles of power. The novel's focalization is certainly on Neela. The feminine gender is shown to be more humane insofar as it is Neela's emotional attachment to the robot that gives agency to it. Neela is granted permission to conceive a male child by the government, but she is prevented from performing the act. Zeno becomes her adopted child in a way, though she tells the robot that it is merely a beloved and trusted friend. Sujata envisions the late capitalism of 2021 as a form of totalitarianism worse than communism. He gives glimpses of a post-human society in which prosperity goes hand in hand with the privation of liberty, and history is manufactured by programmed memory. All citizens are mere numbers. Sometimes it's difficult to distinguish humans from the robots. The electorate is represented as a fickle one that is swayed by the spectacle of icons. Ancient mythology is, however, not pinpointed as the root cause of this fallacy. Zeno teaches Neela that smartness is a question of observation. Giant Narlikar's The Return of Woman is a techno-political fable that stages the conflict between vitalism and mechanism. An astrophysicist who formulated the conformal gravity theory with the English astronomer Sir Fred Hoyle while at Cambridge, Narlikar was inspired to write about the many interesting aspects of science in the form of stories like his colleague. Vaman is the fifth avatar of Vishnu in Indian mythology. He appears like a dwarf to teach a lesson to the demon king Bali and destroy him. The Return of Vaman is set in Gauri Bidanur in Karnataka, where a group of scientists stumble upon a metal container buried deep underground. It seems to have been left behind by a long-lost yet highly advanced civilization. Archaeologists and computer experts work together to decipher the code to break open the vacuum-sealed vault. They are helped in this by referring to Poe's The Purloined Letter because the secret is given in a seemingly insignificant plaque buried at a reasonable depth. The vault itself contains instructions to create a supercomputer. The computer scientist Lakshman builds a meter-tall robot and calls it Vaman. It is a von Neumann machine capable of replicating itself. Rival and foreign companies try to steal the blueprint. By way of striking conversation with the robot, Lakshman's wife Urmila, instead of asking it to solve a problem, speaks to the robot as if it were a human being and asks when she will be released from the confinement imposed by the government secret services. The superintelligent woman tricks her into believing that it would help her, but indeed kidnaps her with the help of subversive elements. The team thinks that there is a spy inside the team, but the suspected archaeologist Naveen reassures Major Samant that he was not collaborating with the enemy. The computer outwits its programmer's inbuilt device to deactivate its moves. The government's experts had foreseen a way to end the schemes of the robot. Since it imitates human intelligence and has inherited human narcissism, they use emotional intelligence to flatter its capacity by presenting it with a ring to praise its performance. The ring was a disguised device to shatter the robot from distance. Indeed, it is Naveen who has deciphered the plaque to reveal the rise and fall of the monad people who relied on the conad robots they created. The more efficient the conads become, the more dependent and docile the monads turn. But the conads go on strike and by their mere inaction wreck the monads' sources of food, energy, medicine and entertainment. The monad civilization was thus extinguished before they had the energy to destroy the time capsule they had buried earlier. Narlikar's novel drives home the point that the dichotomy between humanities and sciences is an artificial one and the cause of unproductive rivalries in the access to government funding for knowledge. It is well known that Prime Minister Indira Gandhi buried a time capsule called Kalapatra near the Red Fort complex in Delhi on 15th August 1972. The post-independent history of India it contained was supposed to be opened after 1,000 years. The Janata government, which succeeded her, unearthed it in 1977. It did not reveal the contents. These were lost forever. Narlikar has an avowed interest in lost knowledge. By rendering modernity antique or by depicting future as past, Narlikar embarks the reader on a time travel and gives him or her the benefit of experiencing the unknown, in this case, the threat to human civilization by artificial intelligence. The transition from the 1980s up to the present day is provided by Vikram Chandra, who describes himself as a wanderer between nation states. His part autobiography, part essay, part handbook, Geek Sublime, charts out the transformation of what was once a vast resource of raw materials and a ready market for finished goods produced by the British Empire that was India into a scientific and technologically oriented modern nation. Indeed, it offers an alternative narrative technology behind the success story of the hippie capitalists of the Silicon Valley by highlighting the tenacious patience of Indian computer scientists trained by a young nation which has invested in them despite the risk of flight of intellectual capital. Chandra himself self-taught programming to make a living while studying filmmaking in Columbia University. Chandra tries to convince us that there is not much of a difference between writers and programmers insofar as both struggle with language. The realization that computing has transformed all our lives, but the processes and cultures that produce software remain largely opaque, alien, and unknown, prompts Chandra to explore the cultural roots of the Indian propensity for algorithmic thinking and receptivity to artificial intelligence. Indian intelligence is based on logical abilities that have been derived from Panini's Ashtadhyayi, the generative grammar of Sanskrit in 3973 rules, Anandavardhana's Dvanyaloka, which postulates multiple layers of meaning in words and texts generated by interlocutory logic, and Abhinavagupta's insistence on memory as the basis of freedom. As grammar is viewed to be the science of sciences, Panini's rules formed the basis of the Bacchus-Naur form of high-level computer languages. Chandra's thesis is that the past and present talk to us in languages that we refuse to hear. The clash of tradition and modernity has been a constant theme in Indian writing in English with regard to both national and diasporic contexts, as in Sudha Murthy's or Hari Kunzro's novels. The modernity of colonialism insisted on a corresponding unmodernity in the regions it conquered, says Chandra. But when we look at the history, music, mythology, literature, and treatises of pre-colonial India, the supernatural powers of gods and heroes, the flying objects imagined, and the theories formulated point to an advanced civilization. It is here that we are able to establish connections between Chandra's acknowledgement of India's knowledge and endorsement of Western technology, thanks to his hybrid text, and Enrique Dassel's idea of transmodernity, that is, the moving of the beyond and before of modernity towards a pluriversal utopia. Salman Rushdie's Harun and the Sea of Stories tried to codify the generation of stories from Katha Sarit Sagara. Vikram Chandra, who is interested in storytelling, has gone a step further and invented a desktop application called Granthika. It is, I quote, a unique writing environment which seamlessly integrates the functionality of an editor, a database, and a timeline, end quote. Granthika is a tool for the writer and not a writing bot that replaces writers. Indians are fascinated by the power of the human brain to defeat computer programs, as the examples of the human computer Shakuntala Devi and Grandmaster Vishwanathan Anand show. More than the post-human, the power of AI to enhance human intelligence and render it superhuman is what seems to appeal to Indian imagination. However, recent trends are somewhat ambiguous. In the Malayalam movie Android Kunjappan version 5.25, the father calls his son Chuban Kunjappan by the name of the robotic nurse that his son gifts him with. Similarly, S.B. Divya tries to think whether humans can become machines if machines cannot become human. Thank you for listening. Bye-bye.